side, knowing each other's joys and sorrows, and going heavenward hand in hand? February 17th. Mrs. Embry has been here today. I long to compare notes with her, and find out whether it really is my fault that I am not quite happy. But I could not bear to open my heart to her on so sacred a subject. We had some general conversation, however, which did me good for the time at least. She said she thought one of the first lessons a wife should learn is self-forgetfulness. I wondered if she had seen anything in me to call forth this remark. We meet pretty often, partly because our husbands are such good friends, partly because she is as fond of music as I am, and we like to sing and play together. And I never see her that she does not do or say something elevating, something that strengthens my own best purposes and desires. But she knows nothing of my conflict and dismay, and never will. Her gentle nature responds at once to holy influences. I feel truly grateful to her for loving me, for she really does love me, and yet she must see my faults. I should like to know if there is any reason on earth why a woman should learn self-forgetfulness that does not apply to a man. February 18th. Uncle says he has no doubt he owes his life to Ernest, who, in the face of opposition to other physicians, insisted on his giving up his business and going off to Europe at just the right moment, for his partner, whose symptoms were very like his own, has been stricken down with paralysis and will not recover. It is very pleasant to hear Ernest praised, and it is a pleasure I have very often, for his friends come to see me and speak of him with rapture. A lady told me that through the long illness of a sweet young daughter of hers, he prayed with her every day, ministering so skillfully to her soul that all fear of death was taken away, and she just longed to go, and did go at last, with perfect delight. I think he spoke of her to me once, but he did not tell me that her preparations for death was his work. I could not conceive of him as doing that. February 24th. Ernest has been gone a week. His mother is worse, and he had to go. I wanted to go too, but he said it was not worth while, as he should have to return directly. Dr. Embry takes charge of his patients during his absence, and Mrs. E. and Auntie and the children come to see me very often. I like Mrs. Embry more and more. She is not so audacious as I am, but I believe she agrees with me more than she will own. February 25th. Ernest writes that his mother is dangerously ill, and seems in great distress. I am mean enough to want all his love myself, while I should hate him if he gave none to her. Poor Ernest! If she should die, he would be sadly afflicted. February 27th. She died the very day he wrote. How I long to fly to him and to comfort him! I can think of nothing else. I pray day and night that God would make me a better wife. A letter came from Mother at the same time with Ernest's. She evidently misses me more than she will own. Just as soon as Ernest returns home, I will ask him to let her come and live with us. I am sure he will. He loves her already, and now that his mother has gone, he will find her a real comfort. I am sure she will only make our home the happier. February 28th. Such a dreadful thing is going to happen. I have cried and called myself names by turns all day. Ernest writes that it has been decided to give up the old homestead and scatter the family about among the married sons and daughters. Our share is to be his father and his sister Martha, and he desires me to have 2 rooms got ready for them at once. So all the glory and the beauty is snatched out of my married life at one swoop, and it is done by the hand I love best, and that I would not have believed could be so unkind. I am rent in pieces by conflicting emotions and passions. One moment I am all tenderness and sympathy for poor Ernest, and ready to sacrifice everything for his pleasure. The next, I am bitterly angry with him for disposing of all my happiness in this arbitrary way. If he had let me make common cause with him, and share his interests with him, I know I am not so abominably selfish as to feel as I do now. But he forces 2 perfect strangers upon me, and forever shuts our doors against my darling mother. For, of course, she cannot live with us if they do. And who knows what sort of people they are? It is not everybody I can get along with, nor is it everybody can get along with me. Now, if Helen were coming instead of Martha, that would be some relief. I could love her, I am sure, and she would put up with my ways. But your Marthas I'm afraid of. Oh, dear, dear, what a nest of scorpions this affair has stirred up within me! Who would believe I could be thinking of my own misery, while Ernest's mother, whom he loved so dearly, is hardly in her grave? But I have no heart. I am stony and cold. It is well to have found out just what I am. Since I wrote that, I have been trying to tell God all about it. But I could not speak for crying, and I have been getting the rooms ready. How many little things I had planned to put in the best one, which I intended for Mother. I have made myself arrange them just the same for Ernest's father. The stuffed chair I have had in my room and enjoyed so much has been rolled in, and the Bible with the large print placed on the little table near which I had pictured Mother with her sweet pale face, as sitting year after year. The only thing I have taken away is the copy of Father's portrait. He won't want that. When I had finished this business, I went and shook my fist at the creature I saw in the glass. "You're beaten!" I cried. "You didn't want to give up the chair, nor your writing table, nor the Bible in which you expect to record the names of your 10 children. But you have had to do it, so there." March 3rd. They all got here at 7 o'clock last night, just in time for tea. I was so glad to get hold of Ernest once more that I was gracious to my guests, too. The very first thing, however, Ernest annoyed me by calling me Catherine, though he knows I hate the name, and want to be called Katy, as if I were a lovable person, as I certainly am, sometimes. Of course his father and Martha called me Catherine, too. His father is even taller, darker, blacker-eyed, blacker-haired than he. Martha is a spinster. I had got up a nice little supper for them, thinking they would need something substantial after their journey, and perhaps there was some vanity in the display of dainties that needed the mortification I felt at seeing my guests both push away their plates in apparent disgust. Ernest, too, looked annoyed, and expressed some regret that they could find nothing to tempt their appetites. Martha said something about not expecting much from young housekeepers, which I inwardly resented, for the light, delicious bread had been sent by Auntie, together with other luxuries from her own table, and I knew they were not the handiwork of a young housekeeper, but of old Chloe, who had lived in her own and her mother's family 20 years. Ernest went out as soon as this unlucky repast was over, to hear Dr. Embry's report of his patients, and we passed a dreary evening, as my mind was preoccupied with longing for his return. The more I tried to think of something to say, the more I couldn't. At last Martha asked what time we breakfasted. "At 7:30 precisely," I answered. "Ernest is very punctual about breakfast. The other meals are more irregular." "That is very late," she returned. "Father rises early and needs his breakfast at once." I said I would see that he had it as early as he liked, while I foresaw that this would cost me a battle with the divinity who reigned in the kitchen. "You need not trouble yourself. I will speak to my brother about it," she said. "Ernest has nothing to do with it," I said quickly. She looked at me in a speechless way, and then there was a long silence, during which she shook her head a number of times. At last she inquired, "Did you make the bread that we had on the table tonight?" "No, I do not know how to make bread," I said, smiling at her look of horror. "Not know how to make bread?" she cried. The very spirit of mischief got into me and made me ask, "Why, can you?" Now I know there was but one other question I could have asked her less insulting than this, and that is, "Do you know the 10 Commandments?" A spinster, fresh from a farm, not know how to make bread, to be sure. But in a moment I was ashamed and sorry that I had yielded so to myself, so far as to forget the courtesy due to her as my guest. and one just home from a scene of sorrow, so I rushed